Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, wherever you've joined us from. We're so delighted to have you be part of this monumental webinar today. My name is Uyi Stewart, and I'm with data.org, and my role here is Chief Data and Technology Officer. 1 year ago, data.org, in partnership with the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation and Dalberg, released Workforce Wanted, a data talent for social impact report. This first of its kind report on global data talent in the social sector explored systemic challenges, highlighted immediate opportunities, and identified 4 pathways forward in building capacity. Those 4 key pathways are new talent, existing talent, transitional talent, and leadership. The Workforce Wanted report identified the opportunity to shape and support a pool of 3.5 million data professionals focused on social impact in low and medium income countries over the next 10 years. At data.org, we have committed to develop 1 million purpose-driven data practitioners in that 10 years by 2032. Now, we will not achieve this mission if we neglect one of those key pathways I mentioned. And as we point out in the report, no one can do this work alone. Only together can we build a diverse workforce of purpose-driven data practitioners advancing social impact. Data.org was itself created by a partnership between the Rockefeller Foundation and the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth. And we have seen the power of partnerships across sectors, across geographies, and across types of problems to be solved. So today, I am so delighted to host a lively discussion with a panel of partners, leaders who are actively building the field of data for social impact. But first, let's do some introductions. I'm going to go through my panelists and ask each of you to please briefly introduce yourself, your organization, your role in the organization, and where you are joining us from today. Let me start with Pritesh, please.
Thank you, Uyi. My name is Pritesh Sethi, and I'm joining in from IIIT Delhi, New Delhi, India. My background is in medicine, but for the last 15 years or so, I've been working in the space of intersection of data and healthcare, building tools and building algorithms that can enable decision-making in healthcare settings. My role at IIIT Delhi is, I lead the Center of Excellence in Healthcare, IIIT Delhi, and I'm also an associate professor in computational biology. So I'm so glad to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Pritesh. I go to you, Lynette.
Great, thanks, Uyi, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Lynette Kwamboka. I am the Senior Program Manager for a program called Data for Now at the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. And one of the things that I handled at the Global Partnership is our capacity development work, including the Capacity Accelerator Network. I am normally based in Nairobi, but today I come to you from beautiful Botswana, where we are doing programs around capacity development and access to privately held data. Thanks, Uyi.
Thank you, Lynette. Rhonda, please.
Thanks, Uyi. My name is Dr. Rhonda Zalesny Green, and I am based between the UK and Spain, and I'm the Director of Digital Learning for data.org. In this role, I'm working on the scale up of our work to cultivate the next new generation of data talent, and particularly for those practitioners who look like many of us on this panel. So great to be here and look forward to telling everyone more about what's to come with digital learning at data.org.
Thank you, Rhonda. And by no means the least, Priyank.
Thanks, Uyi. Great to be here. I'm joining from Bangalore in India, and I am an associate director with data.org, and I lead our global capacity accelerator network, of which all of you on this panel are key parts. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us. What an amazing panel. Now, I want to kick off our discussion by providing our attendees with a better understanding of what has brought us all here together today. And Priyank, I'd like to start with you. A couple of questions. Would you mind sharing a bit about the Capacity Accelerator Network? What role does it play in us meeting our goal of developing 1 million purpose-driven data practitioners? And what has it accomplished since its inception?
Sure, thanks for that question, Uyi. Capacity Accelerator Network, as some of you may know, is a network of key stakeholders, key partners that have come together in different geographies, training providers, academic institutes, social impact organizations, government agencies, data providers. We're bringing these network partners to be able to support and create and cultivate data talent for social impact. We have had the opportunity to launch 3 accelerator hubs, as we are calling them so far. The journey began in early 2022 with the setting up of our first accelerator in US with the University of Chicago and 7 other university partners, where we've been focusing on creating DSI talent and really looking at creating new ways of training in data science from a social impact lens with a focus on financial inclusion and economic empowerment. From then, in the last year, we have sort of moved to launching a couple more hubs, and now in the Global South with key partners in Africa and India. The Africa hub is being anchored by Ph.D. Lynette is here with us, and I'm sure she'll tell us more about it later today. And APHRC is another partner with them in that Africa hub. And in India, which is the most recently launched accelerator, just last month, we launched it in Delhi, where we have 3 university partners really coming together in creating different kinds of academic programs alongside JPL South Asia, that's going to be anchoring some of the avenues for placements and career pathways for the fellows who go through these programs. Now, it's important to understand why a different kind of mechanism is important for the data for social impact space that all of us are interested and really dedicated to build together. If we focus on canonical data science practices and trainings in the way it used to be, we have very limited access to what happens in the social impact space. We're not using curriculum pedagogies that are suitable for local context, that are really focusing on taking case studies from examples of those of the sectors in which we want to have more people involved. The real idea is, how do we support nonprofit social impact organizations and government agencies to be as data-driven as the private sector? So how do we reduce that gap and build that bridge? And that's where this talent piece is going to be critical, where the Capacity Accelerator Network is focusing on creating the talent. I mentioned earlier that the US hub is focusing on financial inclusion data science. Africa and India hubs are focusing on data science trainings at the intersection of climate and health. So with each accelerator, we are looking at a specific sectoral focus, which is relevant to the local context in those geographies. And by creating talent locally, we are really adhering to the IDEA, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility principles that are core to data.org's values. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyank. What a global network. Let us just stay within India in the network you've described. As you mentioned a few minutes ago, right, the data.org team was just in Delhi to launch the India Data Capacity Accelerator. And IIIT Delhi is one of the 3 academic partners who will support the design and rollout of curriculum, resources, and interdisciplinary and experiential learning programs to create and engage top talent. Now, my questions now are for you, Pritesh, as a representative of IIIT Delhi. 2 questions, actually. What drew IIIT Delhi to be a part of this accelerator network? And why do you see expanding the field of data for social impact to be important? particularly in solving challenges surrounding climate's impact on public health?
Thanks, Uyi. So IIIT Delhi stands for Indraprasth Institute of Information Technology. And being an information technology institution, data is in our DNA. Essentially, we are a computer science focused university, but with a very strong focus on delivering impact. We have 6 departments, including the core computer science department, and also the departments which achieve impact by interdisciplinarity of their curricula, such as the computational biology department, the computer science and applied mathematics department, electronics and communication engineering, social sciences and humanities with computer sciences, and so on. So being a very interdisciplinary institution, this was a very natural fit for us. We have been running programs with our departments and centers of excellence, which include the Center of Excellence in Healthcare, Center of Artificial Intelligence, Center for Design and New Media, and so on. So all these departments and centers, they focus on building new talent, which basically can work with data and deliver impact along these areas. However, we figured out that there was a gap, and the gap was to upskill the existing professionals, such as the healthcare professionals, professionals in the government, professionals in NGOs, etc., who have all the domain expertise, but they do not have the data expertise. So we, being an IT institution and running courses, including master's courses and also PGD, postgraduate diploma programs, such as the IBM postgraduate diploma program in data science and AI, we figured out that this is a unique opportunity for us to take our programs and upskill the professionals by building a unique program that actually caters to the unique needs of this particular workforce. So that drew us to this accelerator network. Secondly, we do have a very strong faculty strength who are keen and also working in this intersection, both from the side of health as well as social sciences and humanities. So it was a very natural fit for us. We do think that this is a very important area which needs to be developed. It is a big gap currently. There are emerging hubs in health and data science, but very few universities actually tackle the intersectionality of health, climate, and data science. And with pandemics such as COVID-19 and antibiotic resistance, we clearly see that this is going to become more and more important in the coming years. And people need to be trained to be able to address these challenges with evidence, with data, with models, and with data science. So that's a very important area which needs to be developed further. And we are very happy to be a part of this 3-university partnership with the Data Accelerator Network. And then we look forward to delivering this curriculum going ahead. Thank you, Uyi.
Thank you, Pritesh. Staying within this network that Priyank described, so we're going to move from India to Africa. So Lynette, this question is coming to you. GPSDD is a capacity building partner in Sub-Saharan Africa. Recently, the first Africa Capacity Accelerator Network cohort program kicked off its training. Couple of questions now. In preparing for this moment, what steps did GPSDD and your partner organization, the African Population and Health Research Center, APHRC, take to identify and recruit talent who would be a good fit for this program? That's the first question. The second is, thinking back to some of the Workforce Wanted reports pathways, is there a particular focus on new talent, upskilling talent, or transitional talent?
Great, thank you very much, Uyi. The way we work, GPSDD is a network organization of over 750 partners, and a lot of these partners are actually government ministries, departments, and agencies. We work primarily within the national statistical system, and in most countries working through the national statistical offices. So when we were recruiting the partners that who eventually became learners, we reached out to our network, not only within the government, but also the social impact organizations. And the process was very rigorous because it also wasn't a matter of just recruiting learners to come in. The program that we are running in Africa goes for 9 months. There's the first 3 months of intensive training happening 2 days a week for about 2 to 3 hours, per day of training. And then there's and that runs for 3 months, so that's 12 weeks. And then after that, there's a 6-month fellowship where the institutions get to host a fellow who will give them technical capacity and assistance through identified use cases. So this process for us had to be very rigorous, and how we went about it was to reach out with a call for expression of interest, which was an open call to our partners, and they responded. And part of that response was a letter of commitment. And we reached out to the heads of the NSOs and the heads of the institutions. They needed to commit that the learners they were proposing for this program will be dedicated to this program all the way to the end. And this allowed us to get that very high level commitment, and also reduces the work of the learners trying to convince their management about attending this process. And going through this process, we have seen how committed everyone is and how everything is going, and the kind of new things that are coming up, and even things that we had not thought about in the trainings. A good case, our training is focused on use of data science and its applications in climate change and population health. We did not think to do a complete mapping of all the countries in Africa that have data protection laws, for example, because there's a kind of an assumption that, every country knows whether they have it or not. But then other countries wanted to learn, from other countries in terms of, what the experience has been in that process. Because when you're talking about data science, it's all powered by data. When you're talking about, climate change, population health, everything is powered by data. So one of the things that we also did to augment this gap is working with other partners. So you've mentioned that our main training partner is the APHRC, but reaching out to other partners, including data.org, including the University of Chicago, as Priyank mentioned, who come in and give a 1 hour to 2 hour lecture once a week, to kind of bring these other external and international experiences and knowledge, with regards to this topic. On the second question, we pretty much target everyone in our trainings, because we believe that everyone has something to learn. So we do have, there are some topics. For example, I mentioned, that I'm in Botswana. The way that we do our trainings is we look at it in 3 ways, which is, access to data, use of data, or data communication. At any given point in that spectrum, there's going to be someone, who falls there. So depending on the project, we do, for example, the projects I'm here in Botswana on use of mobile network operator data, the country has not yet, started accessing that data or using that data. We're still at the, legal landscape step. And before we get there, so any training that we are doing for, the government of Botswana is at a gaining new skills point. And then the other trainings where the data already exists, whether it's, from private sector or from the government, in that case, it's, in terms of skills building. So at any given point, we are looking on how to tailor our trainings to make sure that we are delivering and offering the best, and we are offering, what is needed, because we're very demand driven to the learners that we have. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priyank, Pritesh, and Lynette, for laying out this global Capacity Accelerator Network and grounding us in how the work is being implemented in India and in Africa. Let me just quickly speak to the audience who've joined us all over the world. As a reminder, we'll be taking questions at the end of this program. So please share any questions that are coming up right now through the chat or QA boxes, and we promise to do our best to get to them. Now, let's talk a little bit more about what we mean when we speak about cultivating data talent. Rhonda, you know I'm coming to you now. So you are the leader in curating the digital learning work stream of Data.org's capacity building. A couple of questions for you. What are some things that we must keep in mind as we train data for social impact talent virtually? That's one. Here is the second. And when we talk about digital learning, how are we ensuring that we are identifying, reaching, and training purpose-driven data practitioners with the principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, IDEA, top of mind?
Sure. So I think your first question is answered by your second question, because at data.org, we are very serious about the principles of IDEA and then also intersectionality. So when we are designing any of our programs, whether that's virtual or face-to-face, we want to make sure that as we build this new next generation of data talent, we're not doing the same thing that has already been done, which is excluding millions of historically marginalized and minoritized individuals around the world. So keeping IDEA principles in mind is key. So for example, in spring of 2023, we hosted a Gender Data 101 course in partnership with Tech Change. And as we received an overwhelming number of applications, one of the things we took the conscious decision to do was to prioritize those applications from people who identified as having a disability. I personally have a disability, and that for me was one of the things I wanted to make sure that we were working to be inclusive, because particularly in the switch back to hybrid working or going to offices face-to-face, we saw that people with disabilities were left behind when virtual options to learn and convene were taken away. So we made that happen, and we also provided additional support in the form of closed captioning during all of the live sessions, and then of course making sure that the content itself was accessible. So in addition to the principles of IDEA, I would also say that we have been prioritizing quality over quantity. So as I mentioned, we received a great deal of applications for the Gender Data 101 course, but if we wanted to do a good job, if we wanted to make sure people truly learned the skills and were truly able to apply them after this intervention, we could not take on everyone, at least not yet. So with this in mind, when we are designing our programs here, whether face-to-face or digitally, we are making sure that we get a solid group of people focused on really making sure that these folks are able to acquire the skills that they need to lead change within their organizations or through their consulting work or whatever area of data for social impact that they're involved with. And so making sure that we maintain the quality of our operations and learning as we scale is certainly not going to be an easy feat, but it's one that we're committed to, because again, if we want to add 1 million people in the sector that have not previously participated in data for social impact, we know that we need to deliver world-class training, which is what we're here for. And then I would say finally, listening to the learner's perspective. So after this Gender Data 101 course, we also got a wide range of feedback in terms of how we could help people participate through the end and complete the course, what we could do to make the course better itself, and so forth. And so for us, this invaluable feedback is something that will be used in the months ahead as we continue to design new courses and scale up in this area. So just to recap, principles of IDEA, keeping those close, and taking action on them, and as in, prioritizing people with disabilities, and then also making sure that we maintain quality over quantity as we scale, and then also listening to our learners' feedback. So that's what I'll say for that, Uyi.
Thank you so much, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
Quality over quantity. Pritesh, I'm curious. Would you please share more about how IIIT Delhi is planning to not only engage new data talent, but reskill and upskill working professionals?
So this curriculum that we have designed is focused on everyone actually, but with a very specific emphasis on upskilling the working professionals, because we see that there's a lot of domain expertise available in healthcare, and there's a lot of interest that exists. Yet there are very few programs that fulfill this need to upskill the professionals working with the government, funders, healthcare professionals, including clinicians and nurses, and also the new talent. So we have kept this as a broad-based program, but we are very much emphasizing the upskilling of existing professionals. That is why we built this as a postgraduate diploma program instead of a master's program. So we expect that essentially, so we have 4 faculty group of about 4 faculty colleagues spanning the computational biology department and the computational sciences and social sciences and humanities department, with a wide range of other faculty colleagues. I think about 10 of them who are teaching sections of these courses, who have been basically teaching PGD postgraduate diploma programs. So the bottom line of this is that we think that healthcare professionals, government agencies, NGOs, professionals working in the NGOs, they have a very rich base of understanding the problem statements. But we need to come in and help with the data skills so that we are not disconnected from what is needed on the ground to deliver impact. So it is definitely focused on upskilling of the working professionals, but also we are not limiting ourselves to only that. If new members want to join in and they want to basically start with the program and they don't have a background, they are also welcome to apply as long as they are able to pass our eligibility. So thank you for that question, Uyi.
Thank you so much. Lynette, let me ask you, what is GPSDD and APHRC hoping this first cohort gains during their training? And what's next for them after this training phase? Will they continue into experiential learning?
Great, thank you, Uyi. Whenever we do trainings for especially our government partners, trainings for government partners generally result in about 4 things. And one is, better budgeting, there's better policy, making, better strategic thinking, as well as, better national development thinking and planning. The trainings, while they might be technical, we do hope that, the ripple effect is that in these mandates of national partners, that this then will be impacted. So we hope that they've not only gained these skills, that we are literally giving to them, but that we also change the way that they think in this process. One of the things that we rarely talk about when it comes to training, especially of, government officers, is trying to make government competitive. So beyond, what they take out of this is what this brings to government. When you think about people graduating out of universities, their first choice is normally to go into the private sector, to go to big corp or work in startups that get a lot of funding. Very few people actually want to go and, become interns in government offices, or even if you ask, it's probably not their first choice when you think about it. And there is a time when civil service was really the place to be in. So main aim when it comes to capacity development really is to make government competitive as well for skills and for talent. And hopefully that somehow changes the idea of financing within government to be able to, match salaries and be able to, invest more in the talent pool. So we look at trying to change that ecosystem, trying to make it an even playing field, because innovation does not segregate and say, oh, you're the private sector, so you should be more innovative. Government projects need innovative people. Government projects also need people who are well versed in data science, in artificial intelligence, and now there's a big kind of movement towards artificial intelligence, for example, within government. And in most cases, of course, governments are going to outsource this work, but now we start thinking about the ideas of privacy, the ideas of data security. So this is really, at the end of the day, beyond the technical training that we are doing, the experiential learning, that we're trying to change this ecosystem in investing in national statistical systems. So while we will provide all the other things, at the end of the day, this really is our aim, to make government competitive and attractive to young talent, to make government innovative. We're not trying to do away with private sector partners, because they're very important in coming up with innovations, but we're also trying to make sure that even people within government can do these, innovations. People within government can also, have that cross movement from private sector into government, from government into the private sector very freely, because then, the talent pool is very good. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Lynette. How to make government attractive, competitive, and innovative. I'd like to thank all our panelists for their insights and an early glimpse of how we hope to develop purpose-driven data practitioners together with our partners. I want to touch on one pathway we haven't yet covered, leadership. As the Workforce Wanted report explains, the leadership pathway focuses on enhancing and shaping new models to support the design, experimentation, and advancement of data strategies, data talent acquisition, investment in allies such as boards and funders, all working together to advance the understanding of data-driven solutions. Let me turn to you, Rhonda. What role should data for social impact leaders play in cultivating DSI talent? How can data for social impact leaders across sectors, from a global NGO to a national philanthropy or even a local nonprofit, be both advocates for and actors in making the case for data?
Sure. So I would couch that in 3 ways, my response. So number 1, to lead by example. Number 2, to invite more than the usual suspects to the table. And then 3, to make data everyone's responsibility. So starting with lead by example, I think that if you are going to lead an organization, a social impact organization of any kind, you absolutely have to be the one leading the charge to use data. So data-driven decision-making, data-driven leadership, full stop, has to be something that leaders of social impact organizations embrace, and that they practice as well. So things can't be made the responsibility of only some people within the organization. The leaders should be the one taking charge, whether that's with creating and implementing data strategies or practices, or whether it's actually taking data that's available to make decisions instead of using emotion only, then those are the types of actions that leaders would need to take. Secondly, I would also say to not invite the usual suspects to the table. So one of the things that you see a lot of the times in hiring, people will say, oh, well, we looked really hard for people who are not the typical, white male that are working in this area, and we just could not find them. And I think that we have to start seeing all of the people in our organizations as potential data gurus. So this is a skill. It's much more difficult, I would say, to acquire soft skills than it is more technical skills like this. And so the opportunities for training upskilling in this area means that anyone can be invited to take part in data activities within an organization. So we cannot let our own biases prevent us from working with people who could have very creative ideas to help drive data transformation within an organization. And then thirdly, in terms of making data everyone's responsibility. So if you have an organization and there's someone who has no data know-how or training whatsoever, they are definitely the weakest link. So you can't assume that if you have a data analyst or a chief data and technology officer on staff, that means that your organization is data-driven or data savvy. Everyone needs to have an opportunity to participate in training to enable them to unlock their data prowess. And so making sure that leaders drive that point home, that data is everyone's responsibility, being able to understand how to use data in ways that do not cause more harm, so on and so forth. These are all the things that leaders need to be able to do in 2023. And I think the job is only going to become more difficult as we continue to automate processes that were normally just led by humans and by data-driven leaders.
Thank you. So grateful to all of you panelists for these great insights. Let me just quickly remind our audience, please submit your questions, and we're coming to you in a few minutes. But as we prepare to round up this section of our discussion today, let me do a quick recap, right? We've heard a lot of great updates about what's been put in motion since the Workforce Wanted report launched last year. In the next few minutes, let's just look forward. I'd like to hear from each one of our panelists one essential action that we must take in the next year in order to continue on our path to building 1 million purpose-driven data practitioners by 2032. Priyank, let's start with you. 1 or 2 sentences, please. What must happen?
Thanks, Uyi. I think as someone who has to anchor the CAN hubs and the CAN network, I think the biggest thing on top of my mind is to work closely with our implementation partners in each geography, to work with the partners here as well as others who are creating resources, curriculum, who are creating new pedagogies for their local context, and see how can we translate that to other geographies, right? We all understand that each one of us individually is not going to be able to reach the 1 million that we really want to. But how can we take those resources that are created in one geography and contextualize it for other geographies? So for example, GPSDD and APHRC's amazing work in Africa, how can we take that to Latin America? How can we bring some of the work in India to Southeast Asia, for example, and not need to sort of reinvent the wheel, but use what is being created once and reuse some of that stuff, make it available to the digital learning work that Rhonda is sort of leading, as well as make it available to other people who would be interested to take some of this in their geographies. So really it's about how do we create that network of networks, and how do we engage more people, more partners to be able to deliver on the goal of 1 million.
Thank you, Priyank. Lynette, I'm coming to you. 1 or 2 sentences, please.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd like to stick to the leadership part, and I really like what Rhonda has said. At the Global Partnership, we have a training called Data Leadership and Management, which is targeted at the CEOs, statistician generals, general managers of national statistical offices, because a lot of the change that we are proposing might not happen if the leadership does not appreciate what we're talking about. While a lot of, the people who lead these institutions might have, a master's level, education or a Ph.D., a lot of the stuff we are talking about here today is not taught in class. So it is up to organizations like data.org, like the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, to come up with these kinds of programs and target them specifically to the leaderships of, the leadership of these institutions, to start changing that narrative. When, as Rhonda is saying, when we're talking about, data-led management or, data strategies or data leadership, without the kind of information we're talking about today, and without it being structured and provided in a way that is acceptable and in a way that is useful to them, we really will not move fast. So for me, my statement is that we really need to invest more in educating the leaders, in upskilling them, in exposing them to what is possible and what's going on, especially in the global south, in what's going on globally in the global north, because then we really have an opportunity to leapfrog and do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. Pritesh, let me come to you.
Thanks, Uyi. From my perspective, I think the elephant in the room is data. So going forward, building trusted sources and curated sources of data, maybe in the form of sandboxes that are shared across institutions with shared learnings, shared case studies, shared tools that work with these data. Because I think the proof of the pudding is in eating it. So essentially, if you want to train people who can work with these data and create impact, there have to be some examples and proof that that this can have an impact. So choosing the right set of questions as use cases and associated data sets and tools, providing them as shared resources and sandboxes is what that would be my wish, the first item in the wish list going forward.
Your wish is my command. Rhonda, by no means the least, let's round up with you.
Sure. So as I was thinking about what my colleague said, I would say that we need to do data talent training radically different than what we currently see on the market. So one of the things I intend to do in the next 10 years is to create courses that speak really and truly to the problems of today, problems that also relate to harm, because I know that a lot of the instruction is around, how to use it for good, but then we also need to be thinking about how do we reduce harm. So for people who have different genders or different sexualities, different races, different socioeconomic statuses, or even caste, how do we create the world that we want to live in together? You can't do that if people don't know what they don't know. So data training has to be very much married with our social systems and to speak to the times that we're currently living in. And so I'm very much looking forward to working with IIIT and also GPSDD and of course Pre-Onc to help create those courses that will help make sure that the data talent trained by data.org rise to meet the challenges currently confronting us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, we can go on and on, but I'm sure that our audience are kind of getting ready to ask a few questions. We've heard a lot today. I'm gonna look at the questions in the chat. Just to get the audience warmed up here, if it's okay, I'd like to ask Lynette a very quick question. Please, this is time for Q&A. Audience, ask your questions, but just to get the ball rolling here. Lynette, this is for you, right? Since the Africa program focuses on government stakeholders, what lessons can you share for other hubs that may be considering training for governments?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Uyi. I think for me, the biggest lesson has really been, to integrate the way the government works into your training rather than doing it the other way around, because then you make it easier for them to, come into the trainings. At the Global Partnership, we do a lot of, documenting of these processes and the learnings that are coming out of this, because we have 3 cohorts and this will inform their coming 2 cohorts, and getting that understanding of how to keep the the learners engaged, talking to them frequently, but also understanding when a break is needed, respecting simple thing. I call them simple, but they're not really that simple, but things like we can't have a training on Friday because we have countries that are primarily Muslim. So, Friday is an off day or prayer day. So one of the things that we do in the trainings is we target Anglophone and Francophone Africa countries. So making sure that, we have interpreters. So we have live interpretation, during any training that we have different language speakers, and that the content that is also developed, is in the two languages that are taught. That goes to show that you respect your learners, that you respect the people who are coming on. And for that reason, they're also able to reciprocate that. So I think, really documenting those processes and understanding, beyond the human kind of element of all of this is how different institutions operate. When we were coming up with a time, because we're working across about 4 different time zones in this training in the continent of Africa, it's also, respecting things like lunchtime. So we had to make sure that the training at any given point does not fall, past during lunchtime or past regular working hours. So it's the little things really that keep the learners engaged and keeps them really knowing that you respect them, you respect their time, you respect their contribution, and in that way they're able to really stay engaged. Yeah.
No, that's great. These little things truly matter, Lynette. Again, I'm encouraging the audience here. Please send in your questions while we wait. I'm going to turn to you, Tafritesh. This whole concept of ecosystem and partnerships has sort of surfaced throughout these conversations, right? So I'm curious to hear about the various partnerships that IIIT has set up to support this program. For instance, your relationship with Art Park, India Health Fund, and others. Just speak to us about the partnership and ecosystem that you set up to support the program.
Thank you, Uyi. That's a very important question. We recognize that we are a technology institution, and to deliver impact, especially at the intersection of climate and health, we need very strong partners. Fortunately, over the last 5 years, since I've been here, 6 years, essentially, we have built very strong partnerships with many healthcare organizations, government organizations, including Art Park, which is the technology innovation hub associated with the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Also with other organizations such as All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, which is the premier medical institution in the country, with NGOs such as the Madhwani Initiative of Sustainable Health Care, the Wish Foundation, and hospitals such as the MACs, which is a chain of hospitals. So these are some examples which demonstrate the kind of healthcare partnerships. We also are collaborating as a part of the Delhi Science and Technology Cluster, which is an initiative from the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Prime Minister's Office. We are a member of this cluster as a lead organization in AI/ML and healthcare. And as a part of this cluster, we are engaged with India Health Fund, essentially a funder organization, which is looking at the intersection of health and climate change. So we are developing these partnerships. We have developed these partnerships before and developing these as we go along, with the intent that we have a right calibration of our program going forward, but also we have the right set of use cases as we develop these from the need-based perspective. We are also engaging with the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office directly, because they are also very much keen to develop this One Health perspective. So I think these partnerships are a key component of developing our curriculum. We just had our first workshop about 15 days ago, where we invited these stakeholders, and we are set to have the next workshop in the coming month, so that we have the right need statements put on the table as we develop this curriculum. So we do see that these partnerships help calibrate our program so that it does not become technology heavy. It also remains connected to the impact and use cases. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Pritesh. We have our first question from the audience. That's fantastic. Hannah Kwaja is asking a great question. And Priyank, I'm just going to give you a heads up. This question is coming to you. Is there any data yet about what has happened next for people who have participated in the accelerator programs?
Yeah, thanks, Uyi, and thanks, Hannah, for the question. So as I mentioned earlier, our programs in Africa and India are pretty recent. So the India program, in fact, is still developing curriculum, and as Professor Pritesh was mentioning, they're going to be sort of launching the work now. And starting August, September this year is when the first set of learners will go through that accelerator. The Africa program is the one where the first cohort is currently being trained, and they would sort of graduate in a way from this program in the next few months. What has happened so far is the US program, which is at a slightly mature stage, where 8 different universities, and some of them for the very first time, have actually created data science programs. And it's amazing to see that they approached it from a data science for social impact first lens, rather than just making it about generic data science programs. With that, what happened is the learners who go through these programs, and they've come up with some amazing courses. For example, Dr. Amy at Howard University, one of our key collaborators, has launched a Hello Black World course. And that's essentially targeted at looking at data science and Africana studies and helping people learn about Black history and Black data, which is very different from what you would see in any generic data science program, focusing mainly on the private sector. So this is where some of the learners who have been part of those programs have started adopting a different mindset in the way they approach any given problem. The purpose mindset, the purpose bug is now embedded into the way they think and they learn. So whether they go to the private sector, whether they go and work with the government, whether they work with a nonprofit or a social enterprise, this purpose-driven mindset within that data practitioner is what was the aim and is now sort of taking them forward. Similarly, there have been social impact data science labs being conducted by University of Chicago, University of Chicago's Data Science Institute. One of them is in fact going on now as we speak. And learners from these programs have again been able to sort of apply data science to various different problem statements and use cases.
Thank you, Priyank. I have one more question, but I see Rhonda's hand. So this is becoming interactive. So Rhonda, I'm just going to give you a quick minute to chime in.
Sure. Just a quick minute. So I wanted to say as well, some of the outcomes that we had from our Gender Data 101 course, people were required to submit final projects to get their certificate of course completion. And so some of the final projects that we saw were incredible. People were doing gender data audits for their organization. They were creating plans for how they can integrate a gender lens throughout their organization's work. Some people actually use their skills acquired to also analyze data that their organizations were collecting on schoolgirls attendance, participation of MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises in national economies, and so forth. And so with a lot of the work that we're trying to do, we are being very, very practitioner focused, because it's not enough to have the theory if you can't do anything with that theory. So I would say that that's another one of the major outcomes that programs like CAN and our digital learning work are having so far. Thank you, Uyi, for letting me step in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rhonda. I'd like to, as we bring this great webinar to a close, I'd like to go back to the audience question from Hannah and build on that a little bit and ask this question of Lynette and Pritesh, but I know you will have different answers based on where you are in your program. And it's a very simple question. Lynette, what lessons have been learned thus far in applying a data-driven approach to a Capacity Accelerator Network?
Thanks, Uyi. I think for us, it's just that clarity about the demand and the need for, these kinds of interventions. Sometimes, we assume that, especially government practitioners are resistant to learning or to trying out new things. But as soon as we start having these kinds of conversations, as soon as, we start introducing these new ideas, then you realize, the human spirit comes out, to wanting to learn and to take in as much as possible. So the biggest lesson really has been, for us to do more, especially within the government sector, for us to be able to engage, more, in order to be able to also bring the government sector at par. Just finally, one of our biggest goals with any training that we do, and especially this one, is to create a critical mass of data scientists within the civil service. And we remain true to that by interacting and presenting as many opportunities as possible around, the areas of use of data and data by design. Yeah.
Thank you, Lynette. Whoa, there's another question from the audience. Pritesh, I'll come back to you. I was going to come to you, but please hang tight. This question is going to come to you, Rhonda. It's a great question from Jacodia Fransman. It says, I loved the final project, Python, in the gender data course. I'm interested to know how the course content was developed. How do you decide what to include?
That's a great question. So this course actually has a long history. It was initially created in partnership between Meta and Tech Change, the training delivery partner. So when data.org agreed to sponsor people's seats, so inevitably to subsidize them, we decided, well, we need to also add something that's meaningful to us. So we actually commissioned that SQL and Python case study that you would have taken. And we made that a part of it because we wanted to give a more advanced application of the gender data skills for people on the course. And so while we didn't create the original content that formed the bulk of the course, that particular practical case study was ours and was inspired by the wide swath of gender data that is increasingly becoming available from entities like the World Bank, for which that data was sourced. So that's an excellent question, and stay tuned because there will be much more of that in the months ahead.
Thank you, Rhonda. I promised Dr. Pritesh I'll come back to him, but very quickly, Dr. Pritesh, lessons learned thus far.
I think the biggest lesson learned in the last couple of years has been the need to develop trusted data science for policymaking as well as for professionals. So that's basically what is needed. That how do we engage with domain expertise? How do we engage with the understanding that policymakers, that professionals already have, and then basically enhance that with data and evidence, so that it becomes trusted. So that has been our learning in the past couple of years during the pandemic, where we developed numerous tools, also curriculums, programs, etc. And that's going forward going to be a key area of emphasis, that we let the data engage with the expertise so that there's more trust in the evidence.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pritesh, Lynette, Priyank, and Rhonda for such great insights. But even more importantly, thank you to our audience who made the time, wherever you are in the world, joining us at this time. We are so grateful. Just let me speak to our audience quickly and remind you that please subscribe to our newsletter. And we are very active on social media. We provide regular updates, and we do have almost a monthly cadence of seminars that you would like to attend. Thank you. This has been great.
Thanks to you too, Uyi. Great moderation.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.